What if I told you that beneath the ancient homes of a vanished prehistoric people in the United States, archaeologists uncovered mummies with flaming red hair? It sounds impossible, but this is where the story gets even stranger. Because buried beneath the cliff dwellers, who were themselves an ancient long-lost people, lay the remains of another race, more mysterious, a forgotten people. Beneath an even older forgotten people, traces of a mysterious red-haired people appear again and again in some of the driest corners of the world. In China's Tarim Basin, naturally preserved mummies lie with light or reddish hair. In Peru, many of the elongated Paracas skulls are crowned with striking red locks. Across what is now the United States, native traditions whisper of a red-haired people, sometimes remembered as towering cannibals, who once lived alongside the tribes. Some point to physical clues that seem to back up the legends. Artifacts from Nevada's Lovelock Cave, including giant sandals, are tied to stories of red-haired giants supposedly burned alive after being trapped by the Paiute. Mainstream scholars dismiss this as myth, but the idea refuses to die. And then I found this story: the red-haired mummies of Grand Gulch in southeastern Utah. Real, excavated remains that deepen the mystery instead of solving it. What you're about to hear is a tightened version of the original early 1900s article that first brought this astonishing discovery to light. Those who have thought that the original inhabitants of America were either straight-haired, black-haired people with coppery skin, or little brown-skinned dwellers in the pueblos of the West, like the Hopi Indians, will probably be just as surprised as science now is to learn that at least 20,000 years ago, there lived in Utah a red-haired, presumably fair-skinned race. It may be that this vanished folk had their home in other parts of what is now the United States. There are ancient legends of a fair-skinned people in the New World long before Columbus discovered it, and these legends are found in the oldest layers of Native American folklore. In the light of recent discoveries, science is turning away from its former scorn of these stories, which it once regarded as absurd. The mummies revealing the existence of these red-haired Americans were found in caves beneath the houses of the cliff dwellers in Grand Gulch, southeastern Utah. There is clear evidence that they had entirely disappeared centuries before the cliff dwellers, who are now themselves a vanished race, took up their homes in those same canyon walls. Several well-preserved bodies, together with weapons, garments, basketware, and utensils, were sent to the American Museum of Natural History in New York. The public was not permitted to see them for some time, as they were being studied by Mr. B.T.B. Hyde, the museum's expert. Other museums, at Harvard, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Yale, and Denver, also had their share of the mummies, but they awaited Mr. Hyde's verdict before announcing results of their own studies. The bodies, although so ancient, were excellently preserved by the extraordinarily dry air of the region in which they lived and were buried. Their hair ranged from what is called Titian to a violent red, and even the hair of the children was distinctly wavy. We know that their burial ceremonies must have been extremely elaborate. They placed their dead in potholes dug in their cavern floors, lined with baked clay. The bodies, folded in squatting or fetal position, were covered with feathers and rabbit skin robes, and surrounded by arms, ornaments, dishes, and toys. Then they covered the bodies with tightly woven baskets, sealing them beneath sand and earth. Because of the dry caverns, the bodies dried naturally instead of decaying. Dr. George H. Pepper of the American Museum wrote, quote, "The flesh wasted away until the skin flattened on the skeleton, leaving the hair and eyebrows intact, with ears, nose, and skin of the face and other parts in such perfect condition as to seem almost lifelike." End quote. In one case, the searchers found the withered body of an old woman crouching against the side of a rocky wall. Her hair still retained some of its auburn color. She sat there as though waiting, her face marked by resignation and sorrow. In that cave were 7 potholes, each containing a body, one of them a child. The old woman, it appears, had been the last of her family. One by one she had buried her loved ones, and when no one was left to bury her, she remained beside them and waited for death. Was she the last woman of the red-haired Americans? The mummies of Grand Gulch form one of the greatest riddles anthropologists have ever faced. When archaeologists dug beneath the cliff dwellers' homes, they found filled-in caves below, each containing mummies placed in artificial potholes, covered with primitive basketry. No pottery was found with the remains. The only weapon was a simple spear thrower, known as an atlatl, capable of killing only a rabbit. The skulls of these mummies were long or elongate, while those of the cliff dwellers above were artificially flattened behind. Such contrasts puzzled researchers, so the matter was left to Mr. Hyde, awaiting future expeditions to fully investigate the Gulch. Otis T. Mason of the Smithsonian Institution studied the problem of their basketry. He found it was the most primitive coiled type, similar to that used by ancient tribes of Egypt. He compared it to baskets excavated at El Amra, 6 miles south of Abydos in Middle Egypt, dating back 6,000 years, tracing from the earliest New Race period through later prehistoric times. That same coiled style extended far up the Nile into Aden and Hindustan, and through Africa, where it still persists. The presence of such primitive weapons suggests the red-haired people were completely isolated. Dr. Pepper, quoting Richard Wetherill, described their home as follows. Grand Gulch cuts through the heart of Cedar Mesa in southeastern Utah, a twisting canyon system stretching more than 50 miles. It is among the most tortuous canyons in the Southwest, with bends every 200 to 600 yards, creating countless caves and overhanging cliffs. Nearly every sun-exposed cliff shows signs of habitation, either as cliff houses or burial sites. The cliff dwellers practiced artificial head flattening. The earlier basket makers had naturally long skulls. Their tools and burial customs were distinct, their dead placed in clay-lined potholes as deep as 22 feet and sealed beneath coiled willow and yucca baskets. Now consider Peru's Paracas mummies, also with reddish hair and elongated skulls from the south coast. In the 2010s, DNA testing by Brian Forrester, Jennifer Usher, Lakehead University, and Alpha Biolab detected typical native mitochondrial DNA, such as B2, along with Eurasian lineages, U2E1, H1, H3, and T2B. These are commonly found around the Black Sea and Caspian regions near modern Turkey, Georgia, and others. Also consider this. Red hair and blue eyes often pair up. 40 to 60% of redheads have blue eyes. Hans Eiberg's 2008 Copenhagen study traced all blue-eyed people to a single HERC2 gene mutation 6 to 10,000 years ago near the Black Sea. Now look at the burials. The Paracas placed their dead in a fetal or seated position inside coiled baskets or gourds, wrapped them in layered textiles, and buried them in deep shaft tombs. That's strikingly similar to Utah's squatting bodies placed in clay-lined potholes and sealed beneath coiled willow yucca baskets. Both cultures curled their dead tightly and buried them in dry ground, perfect for natural mummification. Both lived in sun-baked, hyper-arid deserts where time itself seemed to stop. Coincidence, given the possible Eurasian genetic link? If they reached Peru, they would have crossed the North American continent, right through the very lands where the red-haired mummies of Utah once rested. Not so simple, is it? So where are these remains today? Early 1900s accounts say the Grand Gulch mummies were studied by B.T.B. Hyde for the American Museum of Natural History. Others went to Harvard's Peabody Museum, the University of Pennsylvania, Yale, Chicago, and Denver. Most came from Richard Wetherill's basket maker excavations around 1900, dated 1500 to 3,000 years old. Some later moved to the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C., including the famous Princess Mummy. Today, archaeologists generally identify them as ancestral Native Americans. Their red hair likely the result of oxidation and arid conditions, not proof of a separate race 20,000 years old. I'm not sure what to make of all this. Is the red hair just a result of the conditions of the environment? But usually where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's been a lot of smoke around the rumors of the ancient red-haired mummies for years. Is this just another campfire story? Or was there truly an ancient red-haired people whose remains can still be found in places like China, the United States, and Peru? Thanks for watching, and keep camping, exploring, and seeking the mysteries of our world.